one about a year ago,
Mm-hmm.
right?
About a year ago.
I'm Ed Brown, President and CEO of the Chamber. If you guys all want to introduce yourselves.
I'm Brock Cherry. I'm the Planning and Community Development Director for the City of Great Falls, and our department currently administers parking.
I'm Kelly Pierce. I'm the director of the Business Improvement District and Downtown Association.
Jeremy Jones, I'm the Deputy City Manager.
All right, and we have Jordan behind the camera, making sure she's here to answer all your questions. If they can't be answered today, we will reach out. Someone will reach out and answer that question. We want to stay to facts today, so we're going to discuss some changes that have happened and what's happened since our last parking knowledge drop. And feel free to ask a question anytime. Jordan will let us know when they come in. I'm Jordan. I'm guessing everything's good and going well. Perfect. So Brock, since that last knowledge drop, what has happened? What has changed?
So, since that last knowledge drop, last summer with the finance department, we identified that we were accruing a significant shortfall when it came to our parking budget. In particular, when it came to the operations of administering to the third party, our enforcement, what have you, to the tune of approximately $15,000 to $20,000. So
Per month.
Per month.
Okay.
So we were able to speak about that with our Parking Advisory Commission, make them aware of what was impending. And the idea was, can we identify incremental changes to kind of ease the pain? The analogy I always used was like, I want to be like Sully and I'm flying into the Hudson and I just kind of want to gently land it. Let's try to avoid as much collateral damage as possible. Unfortunately, we were thinking that we would be able to utilize TIF funds, tax increment funds from the downtown, in order to pay for those operations. And that was our understanding for quite a while. However, with further research and input from not only our city attorney, but outside legal counsel that helps us with the TIF administration, we learned that that wasn't an option. So during the fall, that's when we learned that we wouldn't be able to subsidize parking with those funds. I immediately let the city manager know. I let the Parking Advisory Commission know. I think we let the business owners know that something was going to have to happen, because beginning in January 2025, we were going to start running into the red. And it was at that meeting where I presented the city commission with some really quick fixes that we needed to make if we didn't want that $15,000 to $20,000 every month to accumulate and snowball. And they said, Brock, we're okay with these short-term things, but we need long-term solutions, and we need that now. And I said, okay, I'm doing the growth policy and stuff, so how soon? And they said, very soon. In fact, by the end of April, we want more of a formalized plan. And that's when, fortunate enough for me, that Jeremy leaned over to the city manager and said, I think I can help Brock with that.
Oh, you volunteered for the parking summit.
Sure, we'll go with that.
He
word.
did.
Perfect. So that led to the parking summit group.
Yes.
And there was a group, I think Jeremy, close to 24 of us that started.
No, I think we were in the 30s actually
Okay.
at the very first meeting. And then throughout the meeting series, we, dwindled down to really the core group of who was really passionate about working on the issue.
And we spent, looking at Kelly,
It was like 14 or 15 hours total.
discussing
In person.
in person, good conversations each table. Before we get to the meat of it, there was a business owner and myself who sat down to that first group. And don't get me wrong, we've had the knowledge drop, we've done different things. And both of us are like, yeah, free parking. It makes the most sense. Why are we doing this? Like, what is that? I had a different idea of how business owners can supplement it and kind of monitor, but we quickly learned that there's not really such thing as free parking. And Kelly, you kind of shared, and others have shared, what happened when we went to free parking. I don't know if you can touch on that after COVID.
Yeah, so during COVID, we went and did free parking downtown. And there was zero turnover. The residents, the employees that were working downtown, everybody parked on Central and didn't move their cars. And so the businesses weren't seeing the turnover that they needed for their customers to be able to come down. The enforcement wasn't there. It was just abused.
Right, and we also learned from Mark that he helped Bozeman on their program. And Bozeman has free parking downtown. but they still have a 2-hour time limit. And from what Mark was telling us, they're exploring other options because it's not working for them because
Right.
they don't have the dollars to supplement the enforcement.
Yeah, Bozeman, just like every community in the state of Montana, they have their own issues they were trying to solve for. And they had a huge issue with very limited parking. They don't have a lot of surface lots. And the employees they have a very robust, vibrant downtown. The employees were taking all the patron spots.
Right.
So their targeted enforcement action was to limit it. So there is no option to go past 2 hours. Yes, the 2 hours are free, but they also have parking passes, they have employee passes, so they have other revenue generators to offset that, but there's no extension that you can take. So if you're downtown Bozeman and you're getting your hair done like I do, you don't have that option to go into the 3rd hour because the highlights are just not set yet.
Yeah, I get it, man.
Yeah,
We're
I
right
get
there
it.
together. So, Jeremy,
Yes.
Summit, we spent a lot of time and discussed many different things. We threw out a bunch of different ideas that other communities are doing. With that, what's the takeaway? I know there's not a final takeaway, but what right now is in place from that summit group?
Really, a list of recommendations, and some of those recommendations confirm the actions that were already taken by the commission. But as we got into the conversation, and I think it's important for those that haven't really been involved in the conversation, is the city administers downtown parking. It's been relayed to us many times. There's nothing statutorily that requires that. So this really was a reboot because the conversation's gone on for 30, 40 years. There's many people affected by downtown parking. And if we really don't try to truly get a better solution to manage, it's going to go away, which is going to have a detrimental impact to all the users. The city of Great Falls, the businesses, the patrons, the property owners downtown. And so we just tried to take that approach and let's get the people that are affected to be a part of the decision-making process. I came into this, I had no experience in parking. I knew nothing about parking. In some ways, I think that was a great thing, not having that history. But really, you mentioned Mark, he navigated everyone through how if you modify A, it affects B, C, and D, or if you implement this type of change, how does that affect down the road? Because there's no black and white topic to say, if we do this, we can do this. Because we kind of follow along on socials and everything else, and everyone's like, well, 2 hours free parking, that would just solve it all. It'll drive the increase of people downtown. There might be something that supports that. But the data, downtowns across the United States have paid parking for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
There's not big surface lots. There's not a lot of different options. So if you don't get that turnover, the businesses downtown are the ones that are actually going to suffer long term.
Yeah, and they're the ones who seem to be the most engaged. Not all
Absolutely.
businesses, but the lot of
And the
summit
people
group.
living. A lot of
Yeah.
people don't know how many residents we actually have downtown. It's the people that invested and took a chance on downtown are starting to see the dividends, and it's really exciting to see. I wonder what will be 10 years from now.
Right.
Because this parking conversation will still be going, but it'll have a completely different focus of what we're trying to adapt the system to solve for, right?
Yeah.
But for right now, the recommendations are some of those that were put into place. So $1.50 on the streets, that the commission took action and
Just central, right?
as of right now, it's just central. yes.
Because the technology will not allow.
It will
Okay.
not allow, right? So the goal initially was $1.50 on all curbside parking. Some of our antiquated technology doesn't allow for that to happen within our city. So as of right now, the only technology that does support that is Central Avenue, unfortunately. But there was a lot more recommendations that came out of the group. And some of those being they support the change to the fee and fine structure, which is huge. And when a lot of people say, well, I don't understand how this got to where it is. Well, there's no one target that says this is what caused the parking problem.
Right.
But there's a multitude of different policies that helped assist getting to where it was, right? So we had a free courtesy ticket, but we still had the enforcement on the backside. We had $5 first ticket that didn't even cover the expenses of actually issuing that ticket. And all those just magnified over time to a point where the expenses were outpacing the revenues generated from it. Most people don't know curbside parking downtown generates almost 60% of the total revenues of the whole parking system. So if you wipe that out and there's no revenue generated, you're wiping out 60% of the budget to try to support a parking system.
Yeah, you're wiping out jobs.
You're wiping out jobs.
Right? You're wiping out the ability for commerce to happen efficiently. So it's not just the free parking. Jordan, real quick, anybody, no questions? Okay.
So building off those changes that were made March 3rd by the commission, the group was very sensitive to, is there ways we can try to engage that, an option of free parking. They went through all the numbers. They did basically what we go through in a budget process, honestly, and navigated it very well. And the other thing that was found was the parking garages are highly underutilized,
Right.
especially the south garage. 26%, I think, is the number you gave me.
Mm-hmm.
So the recommendation moving forward at the next commission meeting, to set up for a public hearing, to be clear, I'll explain that later, but is we're going to amend the changes to the parking garages that the Parking Summit group came up with, which is the first 2 hours are going to be free.
In the parking garages only.
In the parking garages only.
Perfect.
For the patrons, and then hours 3 on will be at the same rate the curbside is, so they'll move to $1.50 an hour thereafter. And then there'll be options for a monthly pass that provides an incentive that's a little bit cheaper than paying every day. And then we're actually looking at an annual pass to incentivize even more.
Okay, so, and I think that's the misconception right now is currently you can park free downtown after 5 p.m.,
Yep.
right? And weekends, we constantly see people feeding the meters on those hours when they don't need to. So there is free parking after 5 p.m. and on the weekends. And now with the proposed changes, if accepted, there would be free 2-hour parking in the garages. So there is an option to have free parking downtown. And I think the biggest misconception too is when you park at the local grocery store or Walmart, I know on this Saturday, I walked a lot further than I would have the parking garage to Central Avenue. And I think people, it's just Montana. I mean, up in New York, you parked in a parking garage, you didn't want to park on the street because you didn't know who was going to hit it, whether a bike or a cab. We don't have that problem here, but it's just like I'd always park in a parking garage. It's just something people aren't used to here. So maybe by incentivizing free 2-hour parking, we'll start to build some traffic in the garages.
Well, it's a two-part thing. The group was very cognizant. They wanted to hear from the constituents and the people that utilize downtown.
Right.
And this begins to address that. It isn't the solution everyone wanted, but it moves towards that. And it also helps with the utilization rates of the garages. So it actually addresses a couple points that the group came up with. But that's what you're talking about is beliefs. And that was something big that we did as a group is what are your beliefs about parking versus what are facts about parking? And you nailed it right on the head, right? Is I can park in a garage and I could walk 2 blocks, but oh my God, I didn't get the parking spot right in front of that business. However, if I go to Walmart on the east side, I'm literally 5 blocks away out in the parking lot, but I can see the building, so it's a different belief system internally. And part of what we were trying to do is change that belief system downtown.
You know, I think there's a level of perception of safety in the garages as well. That people don't feel like that they can park in there. There is better signage now, so luckily we do have signage on the buildings that say public parking, so folks know that is open. But there's upgraded lighting in the north garage. There's updated security cameras. So there have been things that have been done over the last couple of years to help with the perception of safety. You know, our police department traffics through there and make sure that there aren't people doing things they shouldn't be doing. So,
And I love that you brought that up, Kelly, because we know that even though we have made improvements to the parking garage experience, that we still have a little ways to go. We still have to battle perception. We are really grateful being able to work with Rob Moccasin, who's our neighborhood council's coordinator, who also served on the police force for decades to kind of give us a public safety eye view from his professional experience to the garages. But we also need to work on userability. So one of the things that we've done in the garages for the purposes of public safety is we lock our stairwells after 5. But if you're out at the Newberry at a late night concert and you want to use the garages, you don't necessarily want to have to walk back to the garages and then walk all the way up those different ramps in order to retrieve your vehicle. So we know that there's some little improvements that we need to make so that people want to use the garages and that the garages work for their needs.
Right.
It's a good point. You think about walking up and down and the extra amount of steps you'd take after
You
a
would
concert.
definitely get your steps in.
You would definitely get your steps in,
You can walk 5 blocks and go 10 feet.
which interesting. Jordan, any questions? No, quiet. We thought we'd have a lot of questions. Maybe we're just doing a good job of answering all the misperceptions and questions that folks might have. So Kelly, you know, the majority, I wouldn't say the majority, but a lot of folks who showed up at the summit were from downtown businesses, and they voiced that they need the turnover. Is there anyone who might think that the turnover isn't good if you're a downtown business? Like, is there anyone who was like, yeah, we should do free parking because it's going to increase my business?
You know, it's kind of all over the board. I feel like some of the newer businesses that come in get frustrated with the parking program, but they don't have a full understanding of how it actually works until they've been in business a little while and see how important it is to have those cars move every 2 hours. Like you referred to hair salons. It does take more than 2 hours to get your hair done sometimes. I've been in the chair longer than 2 hours. So, I mean, like I said, it's all over the board. We really just want it to be consistent, and the enforcement piece is really important.
Yeah, like a consistent enforcement. And
Yeah, and I mean, to couple off that's the unfortunate thing is we all agree if there was 2 hours free parking, that would be an enticing component, right? But at the end of the day, is if you lose that revenue, which due to the antiquated technology and infrastructure we don't have data to say how many people are there past 2 hours. We just know they were here at the start.
right.
And if that revenue, like we said, if that revenue goes away, then how do you pay for the enforcement? And that's the one consistent message is, yeah, we would like, and because that was kicked around for a few meetings,
Yeah.
we would like 2 hours free parking, but what would be the resolve to make up for the revenue shortfall for the expenses needed? Because no one wants unenforced free parking. And that's the bottom line that was that helped guide the group, I think, into kind of the direction and the recommendations they did is there was not we can just get rid of enforcement as well. No one thought that was a good idea.
Yeah, and I think some businesses also express that they currently will pay for customers, not all businesses, but some pay. And when we discuss that, that's something we want to take into account. If a business wants to do that, we want to provide an option. So
Yeah. The kiosks can be very frustrating. There's only 2 per block, and folks that don't come downtown a lot don't realize that they have to walk maybe behind where they parked to find the kiosk to pay, or it malfunctions, or it's not reading their card, or what have you. Technology is not perfect, but a lot of businesses will validate for their customers. So they'll pull up the app and just pop in the customer's license plate, and that's just the cost of doing business for them.
And that was one of the things that was identified at the parking summit. I think everyone thinks that if there is something better as far as an alternative to the kiosk model, let's look at that. Because we all want it to be easier. We all want it to be less frustrating. And I think some of the continuing steps, and unfortunately, because we're government, we have to move at a different speed. We just can't go to a provider that we like and say, you're the person. But one of the next steps is going to do a request for information which is a formal declaration that the city's able to send out to these providers and say, hey, during the summit, we identified these are the key components that we want. What are you able to provide for us? And then we're able to take that information and actually do a formal RFP to ensure that we're getting the best Great Falls-sized sort of technology enhances and improvements for our community. So that's part of the conversation too, but know that that's going to cost money.
Nothing's free.
Nothing is free. And if you want greater ease, that we're going to have to look at that. And one of the conversations that we had with the downtown businesses is, are you comfortable with us utilizing TIF funds in order to utilize those improvements? And I think the conversation was largely yes. If it's going to benefit commerce and it's going to benefit us, that's something that we have to be open to.
And improve the infrastructure, since we know we can't use it for organizational uses, paying for operational stuff. But yeah, to upgrade the garages and upgrade the technology and create the safety aspect, I think absolutely that's an appropriate use of TIF dollars.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to know what TIF dollars are, we did a knowledge drop on TIF dollars to kind of explain it. But the simple thing is, taxes go into a bucket of money, and there's a group that recommends based on proposals that are submitted for those dollars. So a proposal from the city for the garage would be submitted to a group that recommends to the commission. The commission has a final vote to utilize those dollars.
Yep. So,
and it's a state process as far as an overseeing within the state change.
In short, to just build off what you said, TIF is you take a increment of the existing tax rate. There's no additional tax for TIF districts. It just means that you have a little less money going to other taxing entities such as the county, the city, the school district, etc. And the purpose is to take those monies and ensure that there are targeted improvements in these market demand areas such as downtown, so that we can continue to incentivize investment.
Right. So
that's the high level.
And if the garage was in a better spot and had more monitoring and was able to make it easier to use, more people would utilize the garage, which then would create more commerce downtown.
Yep, and you can argue that helps decrease slum and blight, that if you have a vibrant downtown with the type of activity you want, there's less of the undesirable activity. So yeah, TIF is able to be utilized in that way, and we look forward to that conversation when it comes.
Perfect. Jordan, it looks like we had a couple questions, yes?
No questions, but Grady said, we appreciate you all. It's more complicated than it seems to find the best solution. And Zach said, thank you for getting this information out to the community. Thanks for all you guys do.
Perfect. Thanks, Grady and Zach.
Thanks,
if anyone does have questions, you can submit questions. One thing I want to touch on real quick, because it's hot topic right now, is enforcement. And I'm going to stand up, and it's just Ed saying this, but I spent way too much money paying my parking tickets last year. So enforcement has been happening. It's not, they're human beings out there, and we want to respect them. I did challenge a couple tickets because one was definitely my fault, and I stepped up and I said I selected the wrong car. And I will tell you, the city was like, hey, we'll give you this one opportunity. You get it, you selected the wrong car in the app, you made a mistake, that happens. So just know that it's not, they're doing their job out there. Those folks are doing their job. Just like any employee that is in any of the businesses, they're doing what they are instructed to do. And they're instructed to collect the coins. They're instructed to monitor the spots to make sure people aren't past their 2 hours. If they're past their 2 hours, they're past their 2 hours. If you catch them and have a conversation in a polite way, they have a judgment, right? And same with a police officer who gets pulled over. They have a judgment there. But just know it's not about, oh, you're exactly 30 seconds and we just had this summit and now we're giving you a ticket. I think there's a perception that that's happening, and that's not. I think the reality is they've been doing it forever. It's just maybe they're more aware of it because we've had the conversation.
Well, a couple things. And you're absolutely right. One, parking is in the headlines a lot lately.
Right.
So people are paying attention to it. Two, it has changed. So there is no more courtesy tickets. There is no more $5 tickets. And so you are getting, if you're over, you were getting cited your first time. And just with people's perception and paying attention to it, they probably are seeing it. But the bigger part, and I just had this conversation yesterday with an individual, is if the city doesn't know about some of the issues, there's nothing we can do about it, right? So we can sit here amongst a group of us and complain about this and that, and nothing's gonna change because we're not in a position to solve the issue. We had an example that Brock brought at the new Socho restaurant. The side street, I think the 4th Street marker lines were so faded, they were hard to read. Someone overparked, they got a ticket for kind of sitting in 2 spots versus the 1. It was stumbled upon that it had happened in the media, social media. Brock reached out. We actually got our streets department there the next day. They restriped the whole area to make it very clear, waived the lady's ticket, and explained. A lot of people don't realize that if you don't sit right, theoretically you screw up that whole block's worth of parking, right? Because if you're back half a vehicle, then the next one's back half, and pretty soon you're not as efficient on what the spots are allocated for. But we could sit here as a community and complain about it, or we actually go to the people, and a lot of the times, absolutely, there's the discretion to make a judgment call. You know, if you're 30 minutes over,
You're over.
you're over. I mean, you know, there was talk about a grace period. Well, I mean, at what point do we do that? Because if it's a 5-minute grace, and people say, "Well, it's only 10 minutes, man. Come on, you can waive that." We want to create a system, and I believe the working group wants to create a system that's as user-friendly as it possibly can be, that is best for the obstacles that we're trying to address for as a community. And I got no historical reference to base this off of, but I think this is the first of many where we are working with those who actually know about it to find the solutions for it.
Yeah.
This isn't city government saying, we know what's best about parking. I
Right.
guarantee you we don't. But we know some people. We know the downtown. We know some business owners. We know property owners. And if we get the right people in a room and we have actual discussions that are to try to look for the solutions, we can come up with better answers. They'll never be perfect. There's always going to be people that complain about parking, but we can do better than what we're doing today.
Yeah, I agree. And I think during the summit, Kelly, you and I, being the ones that were part of the city,
Yeah.
not all of us agreed on things, but we agreed that some of the concepts that we came up with make sense for the majority of people.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of great discussion, and it was very civil, and a lot of the whys were answered.
Right.
Like, people would bring up free parking, but why? And so we were able to dive pretty deep into some of those topics and figure out like what the real root issue is there, not just this is what I think we should do. So I thought it was very well facilitated, and we actually came up with some really good recommendations, and I'm kind of excited to see where the commission goes with it.
Agreed?
We're going to find out soon.
Yeah, we got a question.
Message, could we explain the on-street handicap parking spots downtown? Do they require to pay?
On-street parking spots downtown are not required to pay
For handicap.
for handicap, and they also do not have a time limit.
Right.
And the purpose behind that is we understand we don't want to make it overly burdensome for people that have a difficulty moving around. But note that we also receive complaints from people staying in the handicapped parking space, not only for a couple hours, but for days. So again, this is where parking is just hard, because we want to make it easy, and we want people, if they have a disability that limits their movement, that they don't have reasons why they can't go and enjoy downtown. But unfortunately, we also have folks that probably are impairing our ability to try to be Great Falls nice and provide those options, who unfortunately take advantage over it. And then I receive phone calls both from business owners saying, hey, this person's in my spot, or other people who have that ADA placard saying we don't have enough ADA spaces. And I have to tell them, well, we do have enough ADA spaces. Our issue is they have a unlimited amount of time that they're able to park, so we don't necessarily see the turnover that you do in the regular spaces.
And that's where the issue of residents and employees,
Mhm.
when they're, they,
Great question.
yeah.
All right, so you mentioned coming soon with the commission.
Yeah.
So what are the next steps and timeline?
So last work session, we presented, right, on the recommendations, and unfortunately, there was just some really big topics at that work session, and we were really constrained on time. So, but we wanted to get this before. So like Brock kind of said in the beginning, the commission kind of gave the direction that they want a plan in place by April 30th. So we're ahead of the game, but we want to actually be more proactive with that as well and get this process going. So in an effort, there's really two things that are going to kind of happen from here moving forward, and they run concurrently together, and it gets difficult to try to establish the timelines that say, well, on this path we're doing this, this, and this, and on this path you got the working group doing this, this, and this, and then there's, well, when does this get done, when does that get done? And some of them are just best guesstimates, right? So for example, moving out of the last work session, send an email to the commissioners, need to submit an agenda report by this Thursday to get on for the next actual commission meeting. And at that actual commission meeting, we will set the public hearing for April 21st, I think it is, if I got my dates right, to move to one, hold a public hearing regarding, we're gonna open the fee schedule for downtown parking again. And we're gonna implement the recommended changes that the Parking Summit group had regarding the garages.
So they're going to vote on that.
They're going to vote on that, and the
Okay.
public will have an opportunity to speak because it's a open hearing.
Okay.
And the public comment there's a public comment section that they'll be able to address to. And at that point, the commission could say, they can approve or not approve, it's up to them, of what that looks like. So, and that's really the fee schedule for the garages. So we literally just kind of had one of these, and the best principles isn't you just keep changing your fee schedules. That isn't great policy. However, due to the nuances of how this process is playing out, unfortunately, that is going to happen a few times.
Right.
Being a government agency, there has to be a public participation component to that. You can't just open a section of the fee schedule. You have to open the whole dang thing again. So that will, first reading is what they call that, will be at April 7th. Is my timelines right? Should be April 7th commission meeting, and they'll set the public hearing for April 21st. Anyone that has questions, concerns, statements regarding parking is more than welcome to state them at that time. And then the commission will either take action to support, not support, or they have the option to table for more. As that's happening, we have an internal staff meeting tomorrow regarding parking steps moving forward. And the group of stakeholders that have been engaged and have really contributed their time will be reached out to shortly thereafter, and we're going to run the other side of this. So the other side of this is like the request for information that Brock was done. We got some templates, if you will, to help with that, because it's a formal page document that will be advertised across the nation, and anyone that wants to provide input sure can. However, the working group needs to get back together, and they really need to focus in on what we are trying to measure and request. So we know we want to be able to have better data and analytics to drive our decisions. We know that. We want technology that's going to make it user-friendly for everyone, no matter your age.
Right.
We know we need to improve the technology in the garages and maybe fully automate them, so we don't have to have attendants. So that working group will really start working on the nuts and bolts of what this looks like. I can't sit here today and say, it's gonna be like this, Ed, we're gonna have this app, and you take a picture of it, and then this happens, and this happens. We don't know. What we do know is the group recommended using TIF to provide the infrastructure and the technology to get here. We gotta go through the formal steps of doing that to get going.
Right.
We gotta create the RFI, that's gotta be published. There'll be a date that says, whatever that date is, May 15th, all information needs to be back. The working group gets together again, and now they gotta start deciphering all that information. Hey, this company looks pretty good. Hey, this company might look good. And then we can start beginning what this really is starting to shape and focus moving forward and what that looks like. Now we're back on the other side. As we're doing that, we have to amend the downtown TIF to make sure that it qualifies for everything that the working group's gonna be doing. So in a near future city commission meeting, we will have amendment brought before the commission that amends for technology infrastructure and safety of the downtown system, that's a qualifier within the TIF document, that you can expend funds for those qualifying purchases. The commission will have to vote on that. So throughout this whole process, you actually have the group that did all the work, continuing to do all the work, that really has their fingers on what this looks like moving forward. And then you have the governing body who has the ultimate say every step of the process to approve or not approve what this looks like as we move forward. So it's a ton of work. Trying to lay it out in a timeline was attempted. I think all we did was create confusion.
Right.
So we're just gonna peel them off and get them going. And we're running them concurrently, because you can literally, if we did this with the commission and then we did the amendment and then we did RFI and then it's 18 months later and we haven't done anything. We're trying to shorten the timeline and get the technology and the infrastructure in place as soon as we possibly can. But being government, we have rules we have to abide by, so.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen overnight, but
No,
having a plan in place of what it looks like is better than where we were yesterday.
so how can folks get involved? So there's the group that we're still together. I mean, you're saying we're gonna help out some more. I just heard
You're
that for
gonna
the
do the
first
work,
time.
you're not helping.
Can't wait.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we're passionate about that. So I mean, if people have ideas or they want us to talk, I've shared. I know Kelly shared. I know a lot of folks have shared what those meetings have talked about. And I get excited about not having an app, being able to scan a barcode or something with the technology. And I imagine the city has requirements for all their requests for proposals and requests for information. So it's the legalities that these companies meet. It's not just Joe in the street designing an app for you. You have things that have to be
Insurance,
met.
bonding,
Yep, all those
requirements.
things. So it's not just going to be some random person. We're going to make sure that it works. But how else can people get engaged and involved? Like if they're not part of that group, do they go to the commissioners and talk about what they have? Do they go to these hearings? Do they go to the commission meetings? Like, how do they get engaged?
There's lots of ways. They absolutely can reach out to the commissioners. That is why we have a commission, right? They work for the constituents of our community. We have 9 neighborhood councils they could reach out to. Our neighborhood council coordinator, Rob Moccasin, has been a part of this whole process as well. They can reach out to Kelly. I mean, the whole goal, it was one of our ground rules when we started this process, is the working group, not city employees, but the working group are now the liaisons and need to educate as well. And that's the biggest thing we're missing in so many things in our community, is the lack of education and knowledge to actually make an informed decision. So when Kelly's downtown and she bumps into someone and they ask a parking question, she has the tools, knowledge, and abilities to be able to answer that. They don't have to come to me, but at the end of the day, they can come to the city. They can contact me. They can contact Brock or Lonnie. They're very educated on the topics, and we welcome all that. I'd rather have a conversation about why we can't do something than someone to assume that it's just because the city's being a bully or they're not listening or any of those things. We have so much great momentum in our community, and I hope we can showcase this process that there's even more we can do together versus fighting and button heads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your presence is power. They say that a lot, like in a different industry, but I think that's important. Showing up and having the conversation and being able to, and if you're experiencing something that you feel is unfair, it's better to go to the right people, like we talked about with
Yeah.
fighting the tickets.
We
right?
have discretion, absolutely.
And I think as a community, we should be grateful that we have a parking problem.
Right.
There was a time not so long ago where we didn't have the businesses and services and all of the things that make people want to go downtown to go downtown.
Yeah.
How fortunate are we? And, you know, a lot of people say, well, it appears we have a parking system or program, just to have a parking system or a program. You're absolutely right. There are business types and models that need this high turnover system that depend on not just people going to their business, but people walking around to other similar services and then wanting to go to their business. And it's a great thing. That's what allows us to have downtowns. This last weekend, my kids wanted to go downtown, but Montana was being Montana and it was snowing and then it was raining. But they ask us to do that frequently. I'll tell you what they don't ask us to do. Can we go spend time out in the parking lot and walk around? So
My kids do that.
so I just think we're really fortunate to have a parking problem. And yes, this is hard. It's emotional, but there are harder and more difficult things. And I'm just optimistic for the future. I'm optimistic to work with the parking summit, with Jeremy, with the business owners. And I think we can make our parking program a little bit better today and tomorrow than it was yesterday. If you choose to participate.
Yeah, and that's, at the end of the day, people just need, I mean, it's easy to sit behind a keyboard and a screen and complain. I mean, we all know that. It's harder to actually step up and input and learn about the whole conversation to try to identify what can be fixed. You know, I heard a lot of people say, man, we've been talking about parking for 30 years. I'm tired of the conversation. The reality is we're going to talk about parking forever, because as the downtown continues to expand and grow, there's going to be new challenges that we're going to have to overcome. The group needs to stay together to really identify those and what can we tweak to make it better. I mean, it's a continuing, evolving conversation that will always be there, but it's the amount of putting that influx into it now to make it better now and more adaptable to accept changes in the future. Is what we really need right now. So, and the group's identified some longer term strategies to even entice more parking downtown in the future. But if we got to address the infrastructure and technology now to show people what it can be, and then let's have those conversations. But they're already thinking about the future. They've already identified things for the future that, you know, doesn't exist today that might make it even better. But we have to fix what we have.
All right, Jordan, any other questions? Thank you all for your time today and everyone for watching. Any final thoughts?
Yeah. To come downtown. There's plenty of parking.
We have an overabundance of parking in town. is the
Lots of
other thing.
parking.
Okay. Well, thank you all again. We'll see you next month in our next Knowledge Trap.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Have a great day.